Hey everybody, we are so excited to see you for this session. I'm really excited to hop into this fireside chat with the illustrious and amazing Miss Regina Wallace-Jones, who is going to give us some amazing insights on what role things like courage, clarity, and curiosity come into leading product design, and especially within the context that we find ourselves in 2021. We all know that 2020 was a really tough year and it really put a lot of things in perspective. So really excited to hear from your perspective just how it's impacted and informed your leadership kind of as you are thinking about moving forward. And also, I just want to say, I'm always just so excited to see other amazing, beautiful Black women in tech, in product. And so I'm going to soak up every single thing you say throughout this whole entire fireside chat. But without further ado, I will hand it over to you to give us just a brief intro and a bio of who you are and all the amazing and incredible things, because you wear many hats. You're doing amazing things. So over to you.
Hi, Lauren. Thank you so much for the warm introduction. I'm always very inspired by the individual who is introducing, because the way that they see how I walk in the world is totally different than how I see the chaos and the confusion of it all. So I appreciate your warmth. I am the Senior Vice President of Products and Engineering at MindBody. MindBody is a software as a service, a wellness software as a service company, and we particularly cater to two big segments of the market and two big customer client communities. So our segments are strong. Our strength segments are fitness and beauty. And beauty includes the salon, the spa, all of the kind of services that fit into that domain. And then fitness would include everything from, sort of interval to bar to dance to, all the ways that we pay attention to our bodies and help make sure that they're fit. I run both the product mission. In fact, I have responsibility for the API ecosystem, and I'll be bringing a new solo product to market in about 3 weeks. It's actually going into the Apple Store next week for testing and review, so that's really exciting. And then I also own all of what I call product services, so that includes product marketing, design, market research, user research. I also have technical program management, and then I have all of our data missions, so data science and AI ML are in my division as well. So really exciting time for us. Our mission is to connect the world with wellness to help them build happier and healthier lives, which is a compelling mission. It's one that I would wake up and be excited about every day. And then, as you also said, I wear another hat as a public servant. I just finished my term as mayor of the city of East Palo Alto, and I think of myself as a COVID mayor. What an extraordinary time to see nationwide, but also occurring right in my very own city, the sheer number of layoffs, the sheer number of families who just didn't have enough, the sheer number of parents who had to go to work while their children were at home, or children who were not thriving in their educational journeys because they were home. They had a learning difference, or some other area where additional support inside of the classroom would have been something that they benefited from, but we simply could not have because schools were closed. So looking at all of that, in addition to the increase in crime and the increase in domestic violence, these are all things that we contemplate as we sit in these public service seats and try to make sure that our people, our residents, our community survives and thrives. Something like a global pandemic has been a really challenging but fulfilling journey, and I never went to sleep every night thinking that I wasn't spending valuable time to help make the world better, because that was definitely what my disposition was, and also what my mental wiring was. I have a husband. He is an engineer of 30 years for Apple, and two daughters, Addison and Jocelyn, who are 11 and 13. So for sure, as I said at the beginning, the way that you talk about me sounds very buttoned up and organized. The way that I feel it and experience it is just full of chaos. But it is a fun life nonetheless. I'm really excited to be with you today to talk about specifically how I manifest that in my work as a product leader.
Oh, I love it. I'm truly of the mind that Black women, we just, I mean, does the world even deserve us? I don't know. I don't know. That the jury's still out of whether the world deserves it. I mean, we are just everything. And just like even so I see you, okay. I get it. We're all they like I was just joking with you. I have laundry literally right over here. And so chaos is the name of the game, but you are handling it beautifully from where I sit. So I'm loving this. But so you mentioned, I think it's really interesting this you really were sitting in two different worlds during the course of the pandemic. One in public service, mayor of a city that is a really incredible city, has its own history, kind of in its positioning within the Bay Area. It's probably one of the more diverse cities in the Bay Area, of course. A lot of gentrification though happening there. So I'm sure you were seeing it directly, the impacts of the pandemic and the ways in which it really illuminated the parts of the system that just weren't designed with probably your constituents in mind. And then your 9 to 5, your day job or your other day job of building this really impactful product that is frankly so probably a huge help for people as they're dealing with this really unprecedented time. So talk to me a little bit about how did we arrive at having this conversation? What were some of the things that were happening in real time over the last year that really kind of inspired you to kind of speak more on what does it mean to kind of develop really meaningful, impactful, inclusive products?
Yeah. So I remember maybe within weeks of George Floyd being murdered in 2020, I remember getting a call from one of my residents who was a high schooler and her mother, and what she was asking for, but not really asking permission, more notifying me that it was going to happen, was that she wanted to organize a protest in the city of East Palo Alto. And I remember thinking to myself a bunch of things. Point number one was, you're in high school. Why are you thinking about organizing a protest? Point number two, is there a way that we can do this on Zoom and keep you safe while you still raise your voice? I remember thinking, well, there's, at the time, there were 3 Black city council members in the city of East Palo Alto. It's unusual to have a majority of your council members be Black. What could she possibly be protesting? We are sitting over the governing authority of the police department, and at every opportunity that we have to keep our force in check and align with the community, we take that opportunity. So I was thinking to myself, all of these things, and I tried to talk her out of it. And by the end of the call, I was really clear that she was not asking for my permission. She did not want me to put her in jail for doing it. She wanted to notify me and be respectful, but she had already put it on Instagram. It was already happening. It was just a matter of giving the mayor notice that it was happening. So what I offered to do with her was send her masks, send her water. I actually sent her the police force and asked her, do you want them with you, kneeling with you, and making sure that our community is clear that they walk with us. They're not here to police us. They're here to keep us all safe. And so she, checked off all the things that she wanted. And then I sent my pastor to pray with her before the protest, because she had set it at a time, noon on a Wednesday, when I had a board meeting in my other world. And I knew that I needed to do that board meeting, but I wanted to make sure that the community knew that I was with her in the protest that she was leading, and also wanted to make sure that her spirit was calm and cared for in the process. And so we're going through all of that, right? And I'm thinking, whoa, like, when I was graduating from high school, right around the age that she was, this was the time when Rodney King was brutally beaten in the streets of Los Angeles. I was graduating at that time. It didn't even occur to me to organize any kind of a protest. I was going to college in the fall, and my head was all focused there. And so I was quietly reflecting on what was different about this generation of high schoolers, that they had such a profoundly clear idea about how they needed to organize all of us to pay attention to something that was not happening for the first time. It had happened for one too many times, right? Where they were saying enough is enough. I was thinking about that. I was thinking about, we're a community of color. We have a undue number of frontline essential workers who are being unduly exposed to the virus, and how do we make sure that we lift up our voice of protest, but also keep down our viral spread. And I was feeling really like I was overextended. And then I walk home after her protest has finished, and I see an email from an employee who effectively says to me, people are protesting out in the streets of every major city in the United States and around the world. And MindBody, which is the company that I lead in as a product leader, has said and done absolutely nothing. And she was an Asian X employee. And effectively she was saying is, I'm ashamed to be an employee of this company. And I remember coming home that night and that, I thought three different things there, like, gosh, I would have never said anything like this when I was this early in my career. That was thought number one. Thought number two is, can't she see that I am like overextended out here in every other way, right? Thought number three was, do I really have to make it safe for an Asian X employee to mourn and to feel sad when I haven't even figured out how to feel sad about this in my own life with my own family, right? And then I went to sleep on it, and I woke up that morning and I said, you know what, she's right. And that 24 hours of time was a really important period of time, because I'm normally one that is very decisive. I will normally send a response right away on something, but that one, for whatever reason, I didn't respond to right away. And by the time I woke up in the morning, I did feel very clearly that there was something different that we needed to do and be as a company. There was something different that we needed to surface up in our products, and that if I didn't take the occasion to vocalize what that was, that we would not have a voice of clarity about what it was that we should be doing, and that we would have a lot of people that cared a lot, but didn't know exactly how to address the challenge. And I had ideas, and so I had to get my strength together, my resolve together, my courage together, my will to be vocally of color in the workplace. Vocally, right? I mean, it's one thing to be and to succeed and to, to stand out as someone that others want to be like, but to not specifically claim or state, I am standing as a Black woman in this, right? Everyone can see it, but I'm not saying it, right? It's quite another to find your voice and your legs and your strength and your confidence to stand in it, to stand in that difference and to see that difference as strength. And so I had to get all that sorted really fast. And then the next steps were very clear, what we did from there. But I'm encouraged today to offer to more product leaders of color, and in particular Black product leaders, that there's so much that we have to offer to the world of tech and commerce and products and market influence. And the biggest part is that we really own what our voice, what our stake, what our contribution, our unique contribution is, and really be willing to kind of stand in it and steer the company with us.
Ugh. I mean, you said so many, I mean, I have 1,000 things I want to unpack, and I'll try to be, quick with it, because I know we have a lot of ground to cover. And I do want to get to some of those specific things that you did at your company, and obviously some recommendations that you have for others. But there's something that I want to unpack really quickly is, as a you kind of mentioned a little bit about this woman reached out to you, and I almost want to know, I wonder, why did that woman reach out to you specifically, or what was it about you, both either from like your leadership experience or just how you show up in the world, or frankly just because of your social location as a Black woman who's also a leader at a company and also has this other really amazing leadership role in your own community. I just, because to your point about having to, get all that together quickly to figure out like how that's a lot of labor. That's a lot of emotional labor. That's a lot of and I feel like it tends to, fall on women that look like us a lot of the time. And so I would love to just hear a little bit more about what was that process of, like you said, getting it together very quickly? How did you reconcile all of that? And how did you get to a place where obviously the benefit or the return on the investment of kind of speaking out more publicly won out in the end? But there is a valid question of like, why me? Why do I have to do this? Why am I the one that has to carry everyone on their back? So walk me through that process a little bit more, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I have two answers to the why me, and there's a subjective answer and there's an objective answer. The objective one is the easy one, right? I was the senior most ranking head of her division, and she wrote the message to her boss, but she copied me on the message, and my sense was that she was in some way trying to be an ally with me.
Sure.
But also in some way creating an escalation and owning her escalation, right? Like I want to be your ally, but I also want you to know that I'm looking to you to solve this problem, right?
That CC, I hit that CC,
Right, that's right.
For my last email.
That's absolutely right. And that was the part that I was, really, really struggling with initially, but that I learned to find some very unique value in being that senior most woman and in feeling like I had something to say. It took me a moment to decide that it was worth saying at work, right? But I had something to say, and it wasn't just I'm caring from the outside. I see this from the inside. And it's interesting because that night and year after year after year, right? For us, for the world, I should say, George Floyd was a big sort of galvanizing moment for the world. For us, sadly, and in my house, for sure, George Floyd was one of many deaths that we had mourned as a family, and we have a certain way of doing that, right? It's like, solemn nights, we're pulling up documentaries and other things. We are, processing it as a family and having more and more mature conversation with our children who are now 11 and 13, but who, earlier on in their lives, we still had to have conversations about what it meant to be, the only Black child in your class, et cetera. And so, for me, there was that objective part, right? There was the subjective part, which was, I've seen lots of people grapple with tough things and not be successful in this work. And I've seen you grapple with tough things and be successful. So I'm also putting it on your plate because I need something different here. And I want to put it on someone's plate that I think has some legs and some teeth and can actually move us in a different direction. And that part was a little bit more daunting, much more subjective because it wasn't explicitly stated. But when I processed with employees after the fact, the why me of it all, those were some of the themes that I started to hear. And so, in some ways, I feel proud about that. And in other ways, I do feel like it's a unique burden that we as Black professionals carry, both as the individual contributors and as leaders in a company. And, in all of this, even though there's work to do and there's work that only we can do, I do want us always to be mindful of our hearts and our heads and our spirits in this and not bury ourselves under the weight of obligation, to be smart about where we can make a contribution and also not overly tax ourselves to carry weights that we were not put on this earth to carry. So it's a careful balance, but again, one that I felt really honored to step into as a tech leader.
So much for that. I think I love the way you framed it too, the objective and then the subjective, and how each of them required some grappling of and some reconciliation, frankly. And and it's no surprise either. I think it was no surprise that obviously how you show up is resonates so deeply, obviously, in so many of your folks on your team. And so I think and that's no accident, is that it's like, we have to be great, and so like, and that with that comes a lot of responsibility as well. So thank you. I appreciate you for sharing that. And we'll have to talk more about that over some mimosas or something, because there's a lot there that I just want to pick your brain some more and be like, so how do we deal with this? How do we do this? That's for another conference. But let's get into some of the nitty gritty of what you actually did, and how you kind of developed this framing of courage and clarity and curiosity, and why you need those specific things. And I love alliteration, so I love the C's. And so let's let's get into that. What did you do, and how did you go about it, and why, and how did you arrive at that kind of framing of those three really important words and concepts?
Yeah, I think the alliteration was obviously in hindsight, but I will say the courage part was clear, right? Because as I said, from the time that I was a fully cognizant teenager until now, there were instances like George Floyd that were happening, right? And so I had been processing aloud these incidents, at least in my household, without actually manifesting these incidents in my work. And so I knew very clearly in this moment, and it took me 24 hours to step into that courageous stance, but I knew very clearly what was being asked of me. The clarity, though, and the curiosity is where it gets interesting, right? Because what I then immediately heard from my employees, and not just employees in my division, but across the company, my Black employees in particular, was this feeling that they were mentally exhausted, didn't feel safe, and didn't feel like they had had particularly joyful working experiences at MindBody. So that was one bucket. There was also we have framed this company in a way that makes it appear as if wellness is not for people of color, and specifically not for Black people, right? All of the images, all of the, the conferences, the trade shows, or whatever, were very upper middle class, white women specifically dominated. And our touch points with many of our customers, which are businesses, were very white touch points, right? And it's not to say that we did not have Black customers, we did, but we had somehow not noticed that they were there, and not noticed that there are some specific and unique challenges with being a Black business owner in wellness, right? So became very curious about what our gaps were there, and also very curious about, if we ask the question, what needs to be different, what might be here, and how are we committed to manifesting that in our products, right? So that was the curiosity piece. How do we kind of get out there and get clearer about where our gaps are? And then the clarity was, now what are we going to do with it? How are we going to make this real for our customers, for our clients, and for our community? And for me, there were some really important insights that we got right away. First of all, we are lucky to have a research team. That research team reports into me, but we had not done any particular demographic research that specifically focused on race. But the moment that we did, what we learned was that our Black consumers, clients, more so than others, wanted to know who was teaching their classes. More so than others, wanted to know who was in those classes. More so than others, wanted to know what's the music that you're going to be playing in this class, right? And these things are things that obviously we intuitively know. We like as I'm saying them, like, of course they
Okay,
resonate
yeah.
with you, right? But we had not done any particular research to call that out. So as a consequence of that, when you go to the Mind Body Consumer app, it's really hard today to tell. You have to go a couple of levels in to tell who's teaching this thing that I'm considering taking, and do I see myself in that experience that has being pitched or created in this marketplace environment. Further, for our customers, our business customers that are actively using the product to run their business, but they were saying things like, you did a great job of reminding me when I needed to pay. You did a terrible job of noticing that my revenue was down, my customers coming into my establishment was down, that I was not receiving PPP from the government because that kind of aid went first to businesses that already had existing banking relationships. And for so many Black businesses, that banking relationship wasn't there to begin with. And so when there was aid and other things that were coming in COVID, they weren't seeing the first fruits of that. And our customers are basically saying, it would have been nice if you had checked in with me to help me understand how to be triumphant in this market, rather than just reminding me of when it was time to pay. Well, to me, those were like marching orders, super clear, right? I mean, like, there's no way to misinterpret what we heard from our clients. There was no way to misinterpret what we heard from our customers. And then it was really about, how do we now respond to that in a way that is graceful and gracious, and most importantly, supportive of our overall mission to help make the world more well. At the end of the day, if Black people aren't well, we're not well, right? I mean, this is our mission, right? And so we put together a really robust action plan. We reviewed it with the board of directors, and basically declared what we were going to be doing differently in the marketplace to help make it much more easy to discover wellness experiences for Black consumers. And also what we were going to be doing with our businesses to help make sure that they were triumphant in not just in COVID, but as businesses in general in wellness. It triggered us to look at financial services as an offering, and to make zero interest loans available to Black businesses so that they can have banking relationships and really get the right kind of capitalization for their businesses. It made us kind of look at our categories and our segmentation differently, so that they could be discovered in much more profound ways and considered along with all of their other competitive peers in the space, right? It gave us all kinds of new ways of thinking about how to elevate Black voices, Black businesses, and Black dollars in this wellness arena. And that, to me, was probably one of the most fulfilling and rewarding product experiences that I have ever had in my entire life, right? Because it was about helping myself to breathe.
Okay.
I was helping the world to get more deeply in touch with wellness and wellness practices. That's kind of like, you can't get much better.
A holy grail of like
That's right.
that is, I need like 17 more hours with you, and I like, please write a memoir so I can read it, and I'd like the signed copy, please. I mean, I just like, it just touches on every single thing. It's like, I love what you said about, if Black people aren't well, none of us are well. We can't say that we're well if a whole entire, community is unwell. We can't say that we're, mission driven in a certain way if we're actually not tapping into our customers and our clients to deeply understand how do we better serve them. And I love what you said about, it really helped you reimagine the categories. It really helps you reimagine the segmentation. I mean, that has, effects across every single one of the touch points that it's under your purview: product marketing, obviously product development, design research, leveraging that in a whole nother way. And so I'm sure you walked away with like, 80,000 new case studies of validated kind of insights and understandings that have impact and inform so much other stuff that's probably happening around across the organization. I just, when you center people who have been traditionally left behind or disenfranchised or marginalized, it opens up such a world of innovation and possibility that benefits everybody. And that's the thing that I want to scream it from the rooftops everywhere I go, because that's it. And this is beautiful. This needs to be like a Harvard business case, so these
or Stanford.
Stanford. You're right about the Bay Area representation. You're right. No, but like for real, this is, and honestly too, I really appreciate you really getting us into the details of what you did, because I think sometimes we get stuck in this kind of rhetoric phase of like, oh, this is our pledge, and then we're going to do some, then for 17 more years, we're going to do the research and understanding to like do something eventually, and nothing gets done. Right. But I love how, here we are almost a year out from last summer, and we have, real tangible things that we can look to, tangible organizations that we can look to that when we can say, y'all did this right, y'all really did this right. And I'm sure there was, I'm sure it wasn't perfect. I'm sure there was a lot of hair pulling, and sleepless nights as it was all kind of coming. Okay, listen, don't look too close from here, okay? Stress. But I love that, and even me personally, I'm going to, when people ask kind of what's, people ask me all the time, well, what companies are doing really well, post-COVID or just in general. So now I have another company that is in my arsenal that
I'm so glad to hear that.
Okay. So you have a stand in me. Okay. Just period. But I know, and again, thank you for sharing that, because I think, people listening to this, whether they're directly in, a product function or otherwise, I think they'll be able to really get some insights on what they can be doing in their organizations and in their purviews. And I guess, I have a two-parter. Okay. Who else or what other organizations have you seen kind of as you're doing this work over the last year that are also you're inspired by, or you're like, job well done, good job, and who other and how would you recommend folks kind of going about this work?
Mm-hmm. So I've seen a real range of different options here for companies, portfolios, et cetera, that are surviving, thriving, and really doing a good job in this area. A lot of people don't know that Mindbody is a Vista portfolio company, which means nothing except Vista is the private equity firm that is operated by Robert Smith, who is the same gentleman who paid off all of the student loan debt for the Morehouse graduates a couple of years ago. So he is the wealthiest Black man in America, and also has a really philanthropic aim, and also really asked every company in his portfolio to step up, right? So how lucky was I in 2020 to be part of that portfolio of companies whose senior most ranking leader, operator, owner operator is also African American, and also the chairman of my board, Martin Taylor, is also African American. So how comforting it was to be the one who was delivering the plan to the board about what we were going to do, and have it be met with an understanding board chairperson who was nodding his head and giving not superficial guidance, but meaningful guidance for how to make the plan even stronger. What I would say is probably because Robert Smith is the owner of the portfolio or the head of the portfolio, that companies that are Vista owned and operated probably did a little bit better here than others. Just by nature of
that's real. Make it plain, okay? It is what it is.
I also found though that some of the brands that we know and love and use every day. For example, Yelp and Amazon and Netflix, that they, started to do things that you probably observed, like looking at their, lifting up Black voices, or lifting up Black businesses and Black restaurants and other things like that, that these were definitely very clear and noticeable changes that many products made on their platforms that you can see and interact with every day. As an aside, I did hear from some of our Black businesses that were our customers that were saying it's really tricky to list yourself as a Black business, because while it does attract Black people, it somehow signals to others that you're not there to help them. And so they're really looking at how do you navigate the wide audience and still signal that you are down with the people, right? Like there's like that conundrum that's there. But I would say that large brands, small brands alike, there were people who really did perfect their mission in COVID and perfect their mission in a very challenging, sort of global observation of the unjust killing of an innocent Black man. And then there are companies that, did a lot of talking. And as you said, 20 years from now, maybe they made some big pledges to some organizations, but you have no idea exactly where that's going. I think for my dollar and for my practices around product, that incremental, and we love to say at MindBody, sort of iterating our way to greatness, that stance that we can do lots of little things that build on top of each other, but that you can clearly see that iterative stance when it comes to this kind of a topical area, right, where we feel like we've been waiting for 400 years to see a different answer, that fast iteration towards greatness is where the stance that we really need to take. And the companies that did that well, I think the ones that really stand out as having perfected their mission in this era. Yeah,
I love that. Thank you for that, because that's a good kind of litmus test too. It's like, who is embodying kind of that innovative, iterative approach, because of the ways in which it kind of like inherently encourages different people to be at the table, it to be top of mind, to think about leveraging what resources where, to be very clear about what your goal and objective is, what that North Star really is, and to also have the grace and a little bit of the breathing room and freedom to know that it doesn't have to be perfect, like right out the gate,
Right.
But and frankly, and to your point, we're trying to solve 400 years worth of shenanigans and problems and challenges and racism. And how do you chip away at such a big and deeply pervasive, systemic thing? And so I love that approach. I'm going to use that lens when I'm like evaluating companies. I'm like,
Right.
You're doing this, or oh no, not you. Okay, I have one last question for you, even though I could talk to you all day long, and I wish we were in person for this, but that's okay. Next time.
Next time.
Is sometimes when I kind of facilitate panels, or even if I'm on a panel, I like to kind of leave people with either an action item or some homework or a to-do, or just something to think about. What would you like to leave our audience today, so that they can have another tool in their toolbox as they're going about their journey in this work?
Yeah. So, I would be untrue to my own mission if I didn't leave with this parting comment. And that is, in all of our desire to push and make change happen, that we have to be so clear about the impact and the toll that it's taking on us as people, us as individuals, as families, on our human spirit. When I look at things like health, and I know that I shared with you that I lost my sister recently to a very aggressive breast cancer. I was reading a book that my boss, interestingly enough, dropped off for me. It's called The Obstacle is the Way. And it looks at a series of different individuals who have taken an obstacle that they had, be it asthma or depression or whatever the case may be, and transform that obstacle into their opportunity to be great. And that's what the book is trying to do, kind of have us recast our obstacles as opportunities to stand out and be great. And I think that there is a lot of merit to that thinking. when it comes to things like systemic racism that are unrelenting and they show up in ways that are not random, right? Like cancer arguably randomly finds, the victims that is going to affect. Asthma, similarly. I mean, there are certain conditions that may tip it off, but it's fairly random in the way that it tags us as people. When you look at things that are some systemic, they are unrelenting. They're there all the time. They wear you in a way that is a lot different from the loss of a sister before her time. And I think that for so many of us, we've treated this as, the extra burden that we just have to carry as people. I think that we should be aware of that burden. And I encourage every community that I engage with, but particularly communities of color and specifically Black people, that we be super careful about the ways that we are engaging in fitness, the ways that we are engaging in, self-care activities, the ways that we are engaging in therapy and in engagement with therapists, that we take the time and the space and allocate our dollars to making sure that we are well in this. And so if that's the one thing that I can say, do it all. Be bold, be clear, be courageous, get it all done. But also care for yourself in the process and make sure that that part does not get ignored, because the only thing that we have to give in addition to our experiences and our unique ways of being is our lives themselves. And if they're not cared for, then we can't actually make the impact that we are put here to make.
Oh, I love that so much. And I receive it. Okay. I receive it. And I hope and know that the audience will as well. Oh my gosh, Regina. I feel like we're like best friends now. And I hope that's okay. I hope that's okay.
With you.
But I have so enjoyed this conversation. We didn't have nearly enough time. I'm sure we could have gone for probably at least a couple more hours. I don't know. We'll see, but thank you so much for sharing your insights for your courage and for your bravery and for your thoughtfulness. And your companies and your communities and your family are so lucky to have you. And we were so lucky to hear your amazing words on today. And everyone, I'm going to give her a round of applause. Yes, hand claps. And to keep tuning in to the rest of the conference. We have such other incredible speakers as well. And thank you so much again. And I will hit you up offline so we can do lunch or something soon.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.